The land of Japan has a rich culture and heritage. Might be famous for its Mount Fujiyama, the busy people, their pets and robots, anime, manga etc. among others. But, we must not forget that this land is the birthplace of several urban legends, including the one we will be speaking today, namely Hachishakusama. Welcome to my channel. And wishing all of my American viewers a happy and creepy Halloween. And without further ado, let's begin the video. First, who is Hachishakusama? It translates to 8 foot tall in Japanese. Yes, Hachishakusama is a character in an urban legend who is known to mention a very tall woman who carries of children and fills the towns and neighboring villages and produces the scariest voice one could have heard in their entire life. Since nearly all people who have seen Hachishakusama have been lost or dead before they could say how Hachishakusama was or the way they met with Hachishakusama, there are very few instances being reported. We shall be seeing one of the most popular case in point. We don't know the date or the location where our story starts exactly. And we don't even know the real names of the characters in the story except for Hachishakusama, as the names vary in different sources. But since the story revolves around an unknown 8-year-old boy, I will be using the relationships of that boy to label characters. For example, the boy's dad, the boy's grandpa etc. for naming. Now, let's dive into the story as we have already delayed some time. The boy used to visit his grandparents' home during his summer holidays. Once when he visited his grandparents' house, he was having the fun of his life playing happily in the garden with his toys and sand while his grandparents were doing other works in the house and monitoring the boy alongside. Suddenly, the boy heard some frightening and thumping sound. When he saw the place where the sound seemed to come from, he was able to see something over the tall hedges of the bushes in the garden. It was a hat over the hedges. But, after some time, the hat started moving. Only then the boy realized that it was not a hat which was on the hedge. It was a very tall person wearing a hat standing behind the hedge. Suddenly, the bush cleared and through the bush stood a beautiful, attractive and a very tall lean woman with long black hair and a big chest wearing a white dress at a distance in front of him. The boy was extremely scared on the gigantic appearance of the woman. But, his fright could not stop the woman from approaching him. The frightening and thumping sound turned louder with each second passing by. Every minute seemed like he was in hell. Suddenly, the woman turned back and walked away from the boy and disappeared into thin air. Following this, the boy went inside his grandparents' home to sleep. The next day, the boy narrated the story of this beautiful woman who came to his garden to his grandparents. And his grandparents were relishing the young kid narrating stories. They thought that their grandson was narrating a fairy tale he read in some book. But, not for so long. As soon as his grandson uttered the word that a creepy thumping sound came from the girl, there was a dismal silence. Both of his grandparents stared at each other. After few seconds, his grandfather asked his grandson details on the appearance, clothes, physique, body measurements etc. As the boy described the face, hair, body, chest and feet of the woman, his grandpa rushed outside saying that he was going to meet his friend so as to save his grandson. When his grandson asked his grandpa to elaborate as he could not understand a thing what was happening, his grandpa told his grandson to listen to the whole incident from his grandma. His grandma narrated all she knew about the woman. She told his grandson that she was called Hachishakusama as she was 8 foot tall. And Hachishakusama was not a beautiful woman as his grandson thought her to be, she was a monstrous spirit of a person. Anyone she sees would be destined to death or would be kidnapped. She added that Hachishakusama was not new to their village or town. She was already hovering the town before a decade. But few monks had captured her and she was kept confined in a ruined building which had 4 Jizo statues to prevent her from escaping. But, somehow, she did. His grandma added that everyone who met Hachishakusama was destined to die within a few days. Just after his grandma completed the statement, his grandpa came with an old woman named Kei-san. Kei-san went to the bedroom of their home and taped the whole of all the windows in the room with newspapers along with the boy's grandpa's help. The boy was then instructed by Kei-san not to leave the room at any cost. Not even to the toilet. He must not leave the room the whole night till 7:30 the next morning, no matter who calls him and how much ever he is forced to leave. Kei-san placed a big Buddha figure in the center of the room and 4 bowls of pure white salt in all 4 corners of the room. After giving these instructions, Kei-san and his grandparents left the bedroom saying one statement to the boy saying him not to be afraid as all 3 of them would be downstairs in the hall. After all 3 of them left, the boy locked his room. Thoughts on his death, Hachishakusama etc. disturbed him every now and then. So as to divert his mind, the boy turned on the television. And while watching TV, the boy fell asleep. But soon, he was woken up by some noises near the window which was covered with newspapers. In a few moments, someone knocked his door. The boy was afraid thinking that Hachishakusama has come to his home. A voice came from his door. "Are you scared in there? If you are, I can come for company." Fortunately for him, the voice belonged to his grandpa. The boy eagerly went to open the door. When he was about to open, he remembered what Kei-san said. He must not open the door irrespective of who comes. Suddenly, the boy took a few steps back. He could see the 4 bowls of salt turning black. The noise on the window kept increasing. The same thumping sound. The frightened boy went to the Buddha statue and started praying for the next few minutes. He was so engrossed in his prayers that he didn't notice the sounds fading away and eventually stopping. After some time, when the boy looked at his watch, the time was 7:30 a.m. The boy ran to his grandparents and they took him outside to see a van whose windows were painted black in such a manner nobody could see who was inside. While he was standing near his door and looking at the van, he could hear several gossips by the public who were pointing to him to be the boy who saw Hachishakusama. Suddenly, his grandpa came outside and instructed him to enter the van saying that he was about to go the boy's home. But before the start of the journey, the boy was blindfolded with a cloth and his ears were plugged in such a way that he couldn't hear anything. He was accompanied by both of his grandparents and Kei-san on his way home. On reaching his home, Kei-san gave the boy a sheet of paper with few words written on it and warned the boy to have that paper with him always. If lost, Hachishakusama would kidnap him. Slowly days passed by and the boy used to speak to his grandparents regularly. But when he requested his parents to take him to his grandparents' house for his holidays, they resisted this. Similarly, when he spoke to his grandparents about his wish of being with them, they too resisted. After few months, his grandpa passed away. Though the boy was reluctant to attend his grandpa's funeral, he was not allowed. After a decade, his grandma was diagnosed with a deadly disease and was bedridden. The boy who now turned into a young adult spoke to his grandma several times a day and asked her if he could meet her for one last time. But every time, his grandma refused. But one fine day his grandma said that he could come to meet her, because he had turned into an adult. And Hachishakusama kidnaps only small children because of 2 reasons. Firstly, they are weak, light and easy to carry. Secondly, small children are ready to receive kisses anytime from anyone as they are used to it. After his grandma spoke about this, the boy was delighted. But it lasted only for seconds. Because, he could hear a sound on his phone. Now viewers, tell me in the comments if you think there is a scientific reason behind Hachishakusama. Or do you think this woman who delivers a kiss of death is not true? You can give your arguments too in the comments section. We'll meet you in the next video about Hachishakusama. Till then, goodbye.